Welcome to Undercurrents. Thank you so much for tuning in. We're going to react right now to some breaking news. Congressional Democrats are attempting to sort of storm the doors of the Department of Education here in Washington, D.C. Take a look at this clip of Representative Maxine Waters, Democrat of California, trying to get into the building and talking to a man who's blocking the doors. This happened, again, Friday morning here in Washington, D.C.
Look them in the eye. Come on, hold your face up. Look at him. Let him see you. This is him. Look at it. What's your name? Tell us your name. Give me that ID again.
Giving you the ID, I showed it to you.
So what?
I showed you the ID.
You do what?
I showed you the ID.
Could you let me see the ID again? Huh?
No.
No? Will someone else ask him for the ID? Will you ask him for it? He won't let me see it again. You didn't see it. You didn't see it. They didn't see it.
Okay, so again, that's Representative Maxine Waters, who at one time was seen early in Trump's first administration as the hero of the resistance. Anti-Maxine was a meme that was going around on the left. Here she is trying to get in the Department of Education. A lot of Democrats tried to get in the Department of Education. You could see in the video there was Representative Gwen Moore, Democrat from Wisconsin. Behind her, Representative Greg Casar, Democrat from Texas, the Austin area. Max Frost, Representative Max Frost, Maxwell Frost of New York was there as well. And they had, Frost posted a video actually of, quote, armed federal officers coming to the scene to deal with the situation. And The Hill basically gave a rundown of what was happening here. They said, a source familiar with the situation told The Hill the lawmakers went to the department after sending a letter Wednesday night requesting an emergency meeting with the acting education secretary over those reports. The Democratic lawmakers wanted a meeting within 24 hours and decided to show up to the building Friday morning when they had not heard back from the agency by Thursday night. So they did not have a meeting. Let me tell you, there's a lot of security to get into the Department of Education, more than actually you would think. So if they didn't have a meeting, they thought, we're members of Congress, we should be let in through the door. We want to talk to the acting secretary of education, let us in. But of course, they really let people in with appointments. So you can see how even logistically that would be a problem in and of itself. But they're concerned that DOGE is going to take the Department of Education. The Project 2025 plan for the Department of Education involves significant reforms that basically shut down the department as people know it today. So you can see from their perspective, if you're a backer of the Department of Education, this is a significant threat. DOGE right now is coming for the departments. There's no question about it. Elon Musk is indicating he wants to do to USAID what he did to USAID. He wants to replicate that in other places via DOGE. And people didn't really know how DOGE would work at first. It wasn't part of the government. It was just going to be making recommendations to the Office of Management and Budget. So what would that really mean? Would it just mean these white papers or these recommendations went over there? Or would it mean stuff would happen? Well, within the first few weeks of the Trump presidency, a couple of weeks of the Trump presidency, it is very clear that DOGE is operating in such a way that it is making changes quickly. It's not studying and then recommending things. It is like quickly going in and basically cleaning house to the extent, at least from what we've seen at USAID, that seems to be the plan for the other agencies. And so, again, you can understand why Democrats are threatened, because they are defenders of the Department of Education, largely the Department of Education status quo. They would dispute that. But just the way that the institution exists in its current size, if not its current abilities, they would defend that. They wouldn't want to see cuts to the Department of Education at all, let alone the entire department cut. Now, what I think is interesting is this follows up on a week of protests outside USAID, downtown Washington, D.C. And those protests have not been successful for Democrats at all. It's one thing when you're protesting, the bureaucratic aid transfer apparatus that has this checkered history of basically operating as an intelligence front, like USAID has. To be out in the streets like Chris Murphy and other Democrats, taking up the mantle of the poor federal bureaucrat who is trying to send taxpayer dollars to trans operas in Colombia or any of the ridiculous spending items, that is a really hard case to make. And it seems like what Democrats are doing is trying to make physical spectacles the hallmark of the second Trump resistance, right? Like we've seen Chris Murphy talk about how they feel like they have a narrow window, he's a Democrat from Connecticut, senator, they have a narrow window to make this case, to mobilize, because DOGE is moving very quickly and Trump's secretaries are getting confirmed and all of that. So part of this is their strategy to give a shot in the arm to the resistance that doesn't seem to exist anymore and say, there will be significant literal resistance to these plans, mobilize public opinion, put some tension between DOGE and its intended outcomes, make it harder for Trump to go about these. But they seem to be terrible at making these arguments. It's like they don't have the muscle reflex. And I've seen this with Republicans on many issues too, but they don't talk about it in like kitchen table ways that make sense to voters. Now, education is a much easier case to make, and it's going to be a hard one for Republicans to make, in fact, if they end up really, as Trump said earlier this week, putting Linda McMahon, his nominee for education secretary, if she ends up putting herself out of a job, that is more of an uphill battle than cutting USAID, which is kind of a downhill battle. So Republicans will have to have persuasive cases in the court of public opinion. Democrats have the advantage, I would think, in that fight. But Maxine Waters shouting at seemingly an employee of the Department of Education on the street, trying to get him to keep showing his ID, this is bad optics, even though they have the upper hand here. And I just, before we wrap here, want to say I think this is representative of the incredible struggle that Democrats are having right now to even make some really like clear layups. Like this is an easy case to prosecute for them, but they're so disconnected and on different pages that they can't even put together good optics. They can't even like make this work right now because they're totally like on different pages. This should be easy. This should be a layup, and they didn't get the layup. They didn't get the dunk. Maybe they're going to eventually, but this ain't it. This looked it just looked weird and angry, and it looks like a defense of the status quo. And with the Department of Education, nobody defends the status quo because we spend so much money per child and our outcomes per child are really shameful. So if you look like you're defending the status quo, you just have to, if you're in a position where you're the person that looks like you're defending the status quo, you do have to figure out a way to look like you're defending something that's good in the aggregate. And they're not doing that here. So we're going to follow this, of course, as DOGE moves from agency to agency. It does look like education is going to be in the crosshairs soon. So make sure to stay tuned. Subscribe here on the Undercurrents channel. Go to undercurrents.tv, join the Undercurrents community over there, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts too. We're here in DC following everything very closely, and we will be back with more very soon.